Okay, so yeah, good morning, guys. Let's have a look here and chat about dealing with complaints. I think that dealing with complaints is certainly something that we have to constantly understand that we have to deal with. And I think that when it comes to complaints, it's everybody's fear. Nobody likes to deal with them, but they are going to happen. They're going to happen numerous times today. And I always use an example of a customer saying, can I have a cup of coffee? And they want it with hot milk, or they want to have their specific meal with a type of starch offering, whether it be with vegetables or chips. And sometimes they ask for vegetables and we deliver it with chips. And that is effectively how simple the complaint can happen. So people need to understand that we don't have to fear complaints. I think complaints are actually, I believe that they're wonderful. They help us to become better. Okay. So let's have a look at what we're going to be chatting about today, just in terms of why do customers complain, types of complaints. Just have a little look at a complaints investigation report, a little bit of an analyzing complaints, and then I also want to just talk about food poisoning. What happens if you get a food poisoning scenario? What is it that you need to be aware of? And then we'll just have a look at just some of your non-verbals in terms of how we approach the guest who is complaining. And then I'll take you through a couple of complaints that have actually occurred in some restaurants in the past month or two, that just in terms of, so you can see what the guest is saying and what really irritates and irks the guest. Okay, so let's have a look here at a quick little video in terms of understanding maybe why guests complain.
So
Go ahead.
well, I was there till 7:30 last night.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks. So, what are you going to have?
Cheese omelet looks good.
Yeah, it does. But I think I'm going to have the soup and sandwich special. Can I take your order?
Could I have the cheese omelet and a salad? And do you have any Thousand Island dressing?
No, I'm sorry, we don't. Would you like French dressing instead?
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any chicken noodle soup?
Yes, we do.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I will have the chicken noodle soup and an egg salad sandwich, please.
Anything to drink?
I'll have a coffee.
I'll have some too.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes?
Could we get some water as well, please?
Water? No problem.
So, how long do we have for lunch?
We have to be back in about half an hour.
Well, I hope the service is fast.
Well, the place isn't very full.
Right.
Service sure is slow.
Oh, here she comes.
Here we go. One soup.
Thanks. Oh, excuse me. Could I get some crackers for my soup, please?
Sure, right away.
How's the soup?
Need some salt.
Here. There isn't any.
I'll ask her.
And here's your omelet and the sandwich. Is everything okay?
Can we get some salt, please?
Sure.
Oh, and also some crackers.
No problem.
I don't believe this.
What's the problem?
Salt and crackers.
Excuse me, could I get a fork?
Oh,
And we still didn't get our water.
I'll get it right away.
Oh, and I need a napkin, please.
Sure thing.
I don't think we're going to make this in half an hour.
Well, we're not going to if I have to wait for a fork.
Well, here, use mine. I don't need it.
Thanks. This restaurant is terrible.
Well, your omelet looks good.
There isn't any cheese in my cheese omelet.
No way. There's got to be some.
There isn't any. Look.
Okay, well, all right. Complain to the waitress.
Miss.
Oh, sorry, guys. I was just letting somebody in.
Miss.
Is everything all right?
Well, no, we still don't have our water. I had to borrow my friend's fork, and this cheese omelet doesn't have any cheese in it at all.
Oh, sorry. I'll return it to the kitchen.
Never mind. My lunch hour is over. Could you just bring the bill, please?
Right away.
Right away, right.
Next time I choose the restaurant, okay?
All right, so bit of an archaic and old kind of video, but I think it gets the point across in terms of why the guests complain. And I really always like to just make sure that everybody understands this. And for those of you who are watching and maybe watching a little bit later, but the definition of a complainer is a decent person who temporarily loses it because of something we did or didn't do. And I think that's one of the most important things, is that a lot of people out there believe that a guest complains because what they're doing is they're trying to get a freebie out of us. They're just being difficult. I think that a lot of people complain just because of something we did or didn't do. So like, what do we mean by that? I mean, a customer complaint really highlights a problem, whether that's a problem with your product, employees, or internal processes. And by hearing these problems directly from your customers, you can investigate and improve to prevent further complaints in the future. And I think that, guys, as you all listen in here, and as you guys are the heads of the business, it's very important that your attitude towards complaints is also on the right path. I've come across many owners, operators in my experience who always believe that the guest is trying to get a freebie from them. And yes, you are going to get those people who are going to want a freebie. But I think that what you need to understand is that we've got to judge each complaint on its own merit. And I personally believe that most guests, when they complain, they have a reason to complain. I don't believe that most people go out wanting to complain and looking for freebies and looking to make your life difficult. It's generally because of something we did or didn't do that is causing them to complain. And you're going to see there's a couple of complaints that have come through, and these are things that we need to be aware of. So, why do guests complain? Yeah, simply expectations aren't met. What is the biggest expectations that guests want? Is they want a warm welcome, they want a defect-free product, they want timeliness, they want us to be nice, and then they want us to give them a friendly goodbye. As what we've been harping on about, and I spoke about it in the last training in terms of suggestive selling, and I've spoken about it in terms of managing our front of houses during season, as I've really spoken about this importance of a warm welcome. Every guest just wants a defect-free product, and if you give me something that doesn't work, I'm going to be agitated with it, and it is frustrating as you all sit there, like Thomas sits there with his headphones on. When he plugged those headphones in for the first time, he expected them to do their job, to make them work. And when they don't work, you get agitated. When you order something, you expect it to come on time. And then importantly is just be nice to me. If you give me a defect-free product, you deliver my meal in time, not fast, but in time. Be friendly and nice to me. You'll be amazed at how fewer people will actually complain. And that's really what we all need to understand, is that I personally believe that your approach and our approach towards guests will actually cause them not to complain. And I often get asked this question, yeah, but Dave, what do you do about those guests who always come in and moan? And my first thing I will say to any manager, any owner, any waiter or waitress, because it's always the question they ask me, is I say, kill them with kindness. What generally happens is that when most guests walk in and we know that they are a serial complainer, is that we kind of walk in the opposite direction. No, walk towards them. Walk towards the conflict. Go and greet them with a smile. Be happy to see them. If you know what they like to have, if there's a certain beer or a certain wine or a certain drink that they enjoy upon arrival, go and preempt it and get it for them. Oh, sir, so can I get you that bottle of Iona, or can I get you your Heineken? Just so you know. And all of a sudden, a lot of people who complain, believe it or not, are just really looking for a little bit of attention. We've got so many weird and wonderful personalities out there that we just have to try and deal with. And that's it. What else do guests complain? Rude and shoddy customer service is one of the top reasons. And I like what it says. It says customers perceive poor service as a neglect of their feelings and do not hesitate to leave a business irrespective of its product and prices. One of the most important things, every single one of us is worried about ourselves. That is what we are, what we want to look at. I always say that if I was to take a photo of the group of us and put a photo up on this screen, first thing that you would do is you'd look for yourself to see how you look in that photo. And that just highlights how important it is for ourselves and how we care about ourselves. So, if you just give the guest the love and the care what happens is often you will find that they won't complain, but then they also complain in a nice way. And I think that that's the important thing, is that we want people to complain nicely if they do have a problem. And like it says here, management must first seek to understand the reasons why customers complain and ensure that they have the capability, all right, and the capacity of resolving the complaint and ensuring that they do not reoccur. That's our biggest thing. I always talk about this, and I say that there's a difference between fixing a problem and solving a problem. I was in a restaurant yesterday, and there was a wobbly table. So what did the guys go do? They took a piece of wood, they put it underneath the table, now it doesn't wobble. Have they fixed it or have they solved it? They've just fixed it. I can tell you now that that table is now wobbly this morning because they haven't actually solved the problem. And yes, they might have thought it's very clever to go and take that piece of wood, but what they've actually done is they've gone and they've just fixed it, not solved it. So the question we always have to ask ourselves is, are we actually solving problems, not fixing them? And like it says here, what are our 5 common reasons for customers' complaints? Lack of communication. If you go and Google it, it's lack of communication, rude staff, low quality of product, naturally, poor service, and keeping an issue unresolved. Probably one of the biggest ones is that never really, and that probably ties in with communication, is not really going back to the guest and telling them what we've done about the problem, what we're doing to try and solve their problem and keep them updated on the situation. And those are the things that we need to remember. So like it says on the page here, a customer or a guest complains because of what we did or didn't do. Maybe we didn't communicate with them. Maybe we were slightly rude. I mean, I've heard of a complaint where guests complained, the guests walked out because the waiters and waitresses were arguing that they did not want to serve the guest. I mean, it's not about who was going to serve it. No, I'm not serving that guest. I'm going now or whatever. It's just because of rude people. It's something because of what we did or didn't do, okay, that upset that particular guest. So dealing with complaints, it's understanding where the guest comes from. And I always believe in getting out in front of it and killing guests with kindness and being friendly and being helpful with people. So, all right, so now what happens is we understand why people complain. They have expectations. Where do they get these expectations from? They get expectations in various ways, and those expectations, as you all know, come from basically a guest word of mouth, advertising that we do. They get previous experience where it was a great time. They were served by an amazing service ambassador or a manager who made their evening memorable. And then now they don't get that same person. These things cause complaints. So we need to make sure that one of our biggest challenges is about having consistency. Do we have consistency with in the business? So remember, like it says here, is that customers returning our stores are expecting nothing more than the same or better treatment than when they received on their last visit. Okay, so just really important in terms of understanding our guest expectation. So understanding that, and we have a look at the guest expectation. Let's have a look at types of complaints that occur. So let's see, out of stock products, simple, short-term solution, long-term solution. Well, what's the short-term solution? Trying to run out of the products. Make sure that you don't do it. But the short-term solution is make sure that your waiters and waitresses, rock stars, service ambassadors are doing what? Are actually informing the people that we have something out of stock before the guest orders it. Long-term solution, don't let it happen. Make sure that you have your stock available. Yes, there are some seasonal products that you can't do that for. All right, so now let's talk about the next couple of ideas here. And this one here comes up and it says ribs that are chewy. What would you do? Ribs that are chewy. Actually, I'm not going to talk about ribs that are chewy. I want to open up, and I'd love you to please just discuss this with me quickly. And let's go with off fish. What do we do if there's off fish and the guest believes that it's off? What do we do in this situation? How do we deal with this type of complaint? What would you guys do? What would be your What would be your take on that? This is an actual complaint that came through for one of the restaurants in the last month or 2 months. So that was what's listed here. Out of stock products was a complaint. Chewy ribs or fish. My flowers were thrown away. Slow food, overcooked meal. My chicken was dry. I got slow service. One of the complaints was that the owner was shouting at the staff. Another complaint was that there was no checkup on meals. Cold food. Noise from another guest I've just thrown in there. And racism I've just thrown in there just as for a point of conversation. But guys, what would you do if a person said to you that they were served off fish? What would you do? Who would like to give that a bash? I know Tracy always talks to me. So Tracy, I'm not going to ask you to talk to me, but maybe somebody else will. Thomas, you're up there. Peter, what is your take on it? Edward, what do you guys think? Timothy, what's your Clay? What do you guys think you would do?
Dave, I would take it off their table and replace it immediately.
Okay.
With the fresh one.
With the fresh fish, all right. Would you charge the guests?
I would. It just depends. Like, ideally not. But I mean, sorry. Ideally, I would not want to discount anything. But also got to just see what the vibe is on the table. Sometimes a glass of wine or the wait is okay. Sometimes a dessert after is okay. Other times it's you have to take the fish off the bill. But I mean, generally, I feel if someone's going to eat the food, then they can pay for it.
So your answer, so kind of what you're saying here is that you would take the fish away. You would then prepare them a new fish or maybe a new item because maybe they don't want the fish again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you would charge them for the meal that you replaced. So if you put another piece of fish down, you would give that to them. You would charge them for that. If they took a blue cheese server, you would charge them for that, or they took a calamari or something like that, you would charge them for that particular meal. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Peter, you're quite outspoken and will share an opinion on this. He's trying to unmute myself. Unmute you. Let me unmute you. I can unmute you on my side, I think. Or it says ask to unmute. I don't know. Let me see. No, I don't think I can unmute you. Yeah, there you go. You can speak, Peter.
Yeah, Dave, in my situation, 90% of the clients who walk into the shop I know personally. So dealing with complaints in an area like Worcester is much easier than, I would say, walk-ins or travelers. But I tend to, we've always had customers walk out as happy as possible, but I would not charge for that meal if they had a major problem with it.
Okay.
That's unfortunately my strategy. I make sure they walk out of here happy, and I follow up the day after or 2 days after just to make sure they're coming back as well.
Okay, cool. So I'm so happy that I chose the two right people to answer this question, or I'm happy with the responses that I got. So I look at what Thomas says and I go, all right, cool. So you want to go and say that, because we look, at the end of the day, none of us ever want to discount bills. We don't want to give food away for free. But what we do want to do is we want to obviously make sure the guest leaves happy. Now, the whole purpose of me asking that question is to get a certain outcome, which is what I got. And that is that you may have two conflicting ways in terms of how you would like to resolve a complaint within your business. My thing is that as the leaders within your businesses, okay, it's important that your management know what is your take on that particular scenario. So as an example, if I'm Edward or I'm Tinus and I'm working for Peter in Worcester, I kind of have an understanding that this is kind of the way that he would want to deal with that kind of situation. I'm not going to get into, he's going to be happy for me to say to the guest, I'm sorry about that. I'll replace your meal and I won't be charging you for the replacement. I apologize for that. And I know that Peter's going to have my back. Are you with me? Whereas if with Thomas, I know that I must charge, and if I do charge and the guest still complains, I do know that Thomas has got my back. Now, what do I mean by this? I want to share a very similar example of what happened in a business. So this happened really in one of the restaurants, and it was a guest. And what some stores or restaurants do is on that table they put a little card, and it says, in the event of you being unhappy with your meal, or you want to give us compliments or complaints, please phone our customer care, which is effectively the owner or the operator's telephone number. So there was this guest sitting inside the restaurant, and he phoned that number while he was sitting in the restaurant. And while he was sitting there, he spoke to the operator who wasn't in the restaurant and said, hey, I'm sitting here at table 25, and hey, the service here is so slow. I'm waiting for my food. It's just taking forever. And this is ridiculous. This is terrible service. So the operator on the phone said, hey, well, thank you very much. Picked up, killed the call with the guest, phoned the person, the management in store, said to the manager in store, and let's just say it's Brad for want of another word. Hey, Brad, don't you please go to table 25. The guy's unhappy. Please go and find out what's happening with his meal. Please do whatever is needed in order to make sure that guest returns. So Brad goes over to the table. He goes and he sees table 25. He hurries up their food. He makes sure that everything is good. Life goes on. Owner, operator walks into the restaurant the following day, goes through all his paperwork. Brad walks in for his foreclose that afternoon. And when Brad walks into his first shift in the afternoon, the following day, operator calls him aside and says, hey, Brad, what's this 350 Rand discount that you did last night? And Brad says, well, you know that Oku phoned you from table 25? And the Oak goes, yeah. He says, well, you know what, you said to me, do whatever I can to make sure that Oak leaves happy. And what I did was I just didn't charge him for his meal. I just thought that was the best thing to do. What does the operator do? Owner, what are you doing? Are you mad? That's my food cost. Are you crazy? You can't do that. So never do that again. You must charge the guest. Okay, sure. So what happens is Brad now walks away. A couple of days go by. Another customer walks in. Customer has a complaint. Customer says, I'm not paying for this particular product. So what happens is customer says, no, I'm not paying. Brad says, you are paying. You have to pay. This is the story. The guest pays, but as the guest is leaving, what do? They phone customer care. They complain about it. They say it's terrible service. Manager's got an attitude. Wada. Brad goes home. Life's all lovely. Comes to work the next day, and what does the GM or the operator say, or the owner? Cheap as Brad. The customer didn't want to pay for the meal. Why did you charge them? Are you mad? Now look what I've got. I've got a customer complaint. Now what do I do? Hey, Brad looks at the owner and he's going like, buddy, 2 days ago, you told me that I must charge people. Now you're telling me that I mustn't charge people. I have no idea what to do next. So what happens when a third complaint comes through and Brad has to deal with it? He just stares at the guests and he actually says, hey, you know what? I'm not going to that table. I'm going to send Edward. So now Edward goes to the table and Edward now needs to deal with it. Now you probably find that Brad still gets into trouble because what does the owner or the operator or the GM now say? Cheap as Brad, why did you not go and deal with the customer? You see, what I'm getting at is that in some of our businesses, our management don't know what they are allowed to do. They don't know, I refer to it as your limits of authority. They don't know what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And like I've said there, I understand what Thomas is saying, and he's saying, you know what? We've taken your meal away. We've fixed it. All right. So I'm going to charge you for the meal that was perfect and that was good. I'm not charging you for the one that I removed. So that way, if the guest takes the complaint any further, I know as the manager that Thomas has got my back as my senior, and I'm not going to be hauled over the coals. All right. And he's going to defend me to head office, etc., etc. Then maybe head office needs to have a conversation with Thomas and say, hey, buddy, we don't necessarily agree with that process. On the other hand, with Peter, I discount it. I don't charge the guest. I make sure they leave happy. I also know that I'm not going to get into trouble. Okay. So what happens is it gives me as your manager a very clear understanding of what I'm allowed and not allowed to do. And this is something that I send out to you as a little bit of a message. And that is, as you head into season, speak to your managers about what can they do in the case of certain complaints. When are they allowed to do what? What is it? Is it a case of if a guest does have a complaint with a particular meal, we're happy to offer them some Hussar ice cream? Are we happy to offer them a little Malva? What are we happy to offer? Do we discount it? Do we do we remove the item? Just that they know what they can and what they can't do. And I do believe that will then help with the scenarios. I'm going to be frank with you. I don't agree that we should handle the complaint based on how a guest reacts. I think we need to do what's right for the guest, because I don't think that if I'm nice to you when I complain, that means you're going to charge me, as an example. But if I'm full of you know what, and I get absolutely arrogant with you, now you're gonna discount. I don't think that's setting a good tone. I think that there needs to be what's the right way. How do we deal with it? And it doesn't matter how you deal with me, I will respond appropriately, because that is the values that we have chosen within our business, is that we want the guests to have a great time, and this is what we're going to do. Because I think that if we, yes, Thomas.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to respond to that, because I think that's also, that happened to me the other night, and it was about tough ribs, which, as I've just seen, has been resolved this morning, because it had to be escalated to Brad. That's, so we had a table where 2 guests ordered ribs, and they were undercooked, and it was a fresh batch that day, and had gone out. Now this guy was pretty drunk, and he was, swearing at me and rude about it and everything, and I understand the process there. Don't tolerate, guests that swear at you. But for me, it was just de-escalating the situation as quickly as possible. And I mean, I spent a lot of time at the table. I think that's very important with complaints, is not only just taking the food, removing the food from the bill, or, doing whatever the appropriate measure is, but it's also just spending time with the guests and communicating, and, and just making them know that we're taking their complaints seriously. Anyway, there were 2 guys that had ribs on the table. The one guy was not happy with his ribs, legitimately so, but a little bit rude about it. The other guy was very sweet and chilled and loving his ribs, and eats them. And because of the way that the guy responded, I had to remove those ribs from his bill, because he wanted to carry on eating them. So I took them off. The other guy that didn't complain and was enjoying his ribs, I decided to also take those ribs off the bill, because those ribs were the same batch. They were equally tough. But the one guy was complaining about the toughness. The other guy was super chilled. But it was not fair. Why should a guy, that swears at me, get a benefit of a free meal, but the other guy who's, not entirely happy with his ribs, but not making a stink about it, it is also appropriate for him not to pay, considering they're exactly the same quality ribs.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to.
Yeah, 100%. And I personally agree with that. And not everybody will agree with that. It does depend on where you're going with your business, but I think that it does happen, especially if we're preparing our own ribs or something like that, is that you are going to realize, and maybe we undercook them, therefore they're not as soft as they should be. Sometimes we actually get complaints that they're too soft, they fall off the bone too much, and then that's also a problem. But I think that I like what you're saying there, Thomas, and I don't think that I shouldn't have to throw my toys in order to get my complaint dealt with properly. And unfortunately, human nature means that we react a lot quicker to somebody who's a lot more aggressive. And what I think happens is we then cause our guests to think, well, if you want to get any reaction, you need to throw your toys out. Tracy, thanks. Nice to have you here.
Hi, Dave. I just wanted to say every situation is different, and I think that my management team, they can kind of gauge what needs to be done on the table, and the escalation of how badly the complaint is going. We try and be proactive as well, obviously, instead of reactive, as much as we can, especially when it comes to like food that's been delayed. We can see there's a delay. We try and jump in and go to the table before they ask and just say, guys, I see your food is taking a little bit long. Just be aware there is a backlog, and we are trying to get to it as soon as we can, just before they actually say, oh, hang on a second, why is our food taking so long? So I mean, my guys are kind of, they're very well equipped to kind of go to the table and and see what the complaint is. I don't think every single time we need to just take off their food. For me, it's a kind of a thing where you can gauge what's happening at the table. Like if you just, like you say, listen to what their complaint is. If you need to just say, guys, you're not paying for anything, we've ruined your nights, then so be it. Like, I'm always going to support the manager that does that. But also, if it's a stupid complaint, like, oh, my steak is undercooked, we can just put it back onto the grill and cook it some more. And if he's happy with that, then that's cool.
Yeah.
It's not a case of where we have to take off the meat. And then also, my guys also understand that when we get a complaint on our Go review the next day, and it might be something small, all we have to do is phone the guests. You know, sometimes they just want someone to listen to them and to explain to them the situation. They don't particularly want a free meal. And that's what we need to stop doing, is just stop inviting people back for a free meal because they've said something on Go review because, you know, it's something that they want rectified. Sometimes they just want to someone to listen to you. So it's also, you can tell when someone wants a free meal and when someone doesn't. They just want it fixed so that when the next time they come, they don't have to have the same problem again.
Yes.
Thanks.
100%,
That's my 2
Tracy.
cents.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And I agree with you. And this is what I'm saying to you, is that through these types of conversations, and I'm not saying that Peter goes out there and he gives people free meals for every time that they come in, but I think if we use the example that I shared with him and that he used in terms of an off meal, I think that he's using that as a particular example, especially when it's an off product. But I must be honest with you, I do agree with what I agree with both platforms in terms of this, and that is that first of all, sometimes you insult a guest by trying to give them their meal for free. I also think that sometimes a lot of managers believe, and people believe, that if we give it to the guest for free, then they've got no excuse. They're not allowed to go and complain any further about it. Because I was actually dealing with a complaint for a business once in a restaurant, and the owner just said, "Hey, just give it to them for free. Then they can't complain to head office or anything about it." And I looked at the owner and said, "But it's not about that. You don't just give it for free because you don't want to get a head office complaint. I get that. If I've destroyed, if we've given you such a poor experience because your food took too long, or we gave you an off product, which is a pretty serious one, but like it was just a bad night. Like you waited an hour for your food. When it came, the food was wrong, and it was just, in your heart of hearts, it was a disaster. Then yes, then you need to consider and say, okay, well, how are we going to make this up to the guest, because this wasn't right? But like you say, I firmly believe that like if it was the ribs were chewy, or the meal is overcooked, or it's a little bit dry, I'm going to replace it for you, and because you've eaten it and I've given you a quality product, I'm going to charge you for that, you know. But if I believe that we've not given you the Hussar Grill experience that we wanted to, then I'm going to turn around and I'll say to the guest, "Sorry, so ma'am, I'm not going to charge you tonight." And guests will argue with you, eh? They'll turn around and say, "No, I came here to pay," because I think they think that we think that they're serial complainers. But I'd rather say, "No, so ma'am, you're not having the experience that I want you to have. So I don't feel it's right to charge you. And all I would like you to do is to come back in your own time." Because I honestly believe that if you don't get the experience that you're looking for, I feel bad about charging. So 100%, Trace, I agree. And I like what you also said there, is that, you know, any complaints you get from a Go review or something like that, where you can go and talk to the guest again. Absolutely. Sometimes I just want to be heard. You know, I remember dealing with a complaint, and a guy asked me, "What do I do here?" And he said, "Hey, it was a complaint about a kid's birthday party in a Spur." And I just said, you know, and this guest sent an email about the what had happened to them, and the owner like said to me, "This is ridiculous. This guest is like, we made a mistake. We fixed it. We gave them free this. We gave them free that, and now this lady's still complaining. I can't believe it." And I said to him, I said, "No, she's not complaining. She's actually telling you, please fix it. I don't want any freebies. I'm just telling you, and I'm telling their head office, so that they will make sure that it gets done, because I don't actually want it to happen to anybody else." And I just said to him, I said, "Just phone the lady, say, ma'am, thank you very much for your feedback. This is the measures we've put in place to prevent that from happening again. And thank you." And I promise you, the guest was over the moon that the guy just got back to her and acknowledged her thing, because they had sorted out the complaint at the time of the event. She didn't want a freebie. So yeah, I do agree with you, Tracy. And yes, as much as we say certain complaints do need to be taken on merit, I just get concerned that we only, if the person loses their marbles, do we then like kick in with action. I think there needs to be certain things that we do in the event of certain ideas. You know what I mean? So, I mean, how's this for a complaint? Going back to the screen. I mean, flowers thrown away. I don't know the exact details of the complaint, but I mean, you know, yeah. I mean, if you leave your flowers behind after your function at the Hussar Grill, you know, how long do they expect us to keep them for? So you know, the short-term solution is maybe to make sure that we don't throw anything away. Keep the flowers, use them for decoration in the restaurant, or try and keep them. Try and phone somebody from the reservation, or go onto your COVID screening sheets and phone and say your flowers are left behind. You know, and those are some solutions. It's thinking out the box, but maybe a waiter or waitress, maybe they thought, hey, these flowers are cool, and took them home with themselves. You know, and unfortunately that goes down as a head office complaint. Slow food. What do we do with slow food? It may happen in December, guys, as we're moving forward. And Tracy mentioned it, and I think that you are right, Tracy. I firmly believe that from a slow food perspective, you need to get out ahead of that. If you realize the meal is taking a little bit too long, it's getting them to the 30, 40 minutes, or maybe the 25, 30-minute barrier. You know what I mean? Go out to the guests. Hey, so, ma'am, I'm terribly sorry. Your food is taking a little bit longer. I am working on it. I believe that you need to tell the guest that their meal is taking long before they tell you that the meal is taking a little bit longer. If the meal is going to take longer than 30, 40 minutes, I don't know what you guys think, but you know what? Go to the cold section and grab a salad and put that on the table. You know, grab some biltong, put that on the table. Something that's very quick, because a lot of people will go and say, well, let's just give them something extra to drink. Yeah, but you know what? A drink doesn't always make it up, but as something to nibble on, a little food item can certainly help. It's not necessarily the answer, but first of all, as what you're saying, Tracy, is I'm acknowledging, I understand that it's taking a long time. I am giving you something to eat, which is really what you are. You're probably very hungry, because a lot of people arrive at restaurants hungry. They don't arrive there full. They arrive there hungry and ready to eat. That's why we want to offer them starters, etc. So with the slow food, that is definitely an option to have a look at. And then obviously that's short-term solution. Long-term solution is, well, what's causing the food to take a long time? You know, did we not defrost products? Did we not do our prepping correctly? Did we not have enough staffing? What was the reason for that? Okay. Overcooked meals, we've kind of spoken about that. You know, dry chicken, what are you going to do? You know, what's caused that? Why did we overcook the product? Simply replace and give it and apologize and give it back to the guest. And when you replace that meal, you know, does it mean that you do not charge? I think that you would still charge for the meal that you replace it with. And those are things that you want to look out for. But once again, you always want to go back. You always want to go back to your cooking procedures. Where did we actually go? Did we actually go wrong? Okay. What do you do about a service issue? The guest complains about service. What are you going to do about that? Anybody like to knock in on that? So you have a service issue.
Yeah, Dave, this is Tim. Good, thank you, sure. So I think the first thing that you got to do is, and I think it's a philosophy in all of our restaurants, is the managers on the floor actually watching the service as it goes by. The first point is, I take it personally as a manager when I get a service complaint, because it means I'm not really doing my job. Secondly, my quickest solution, if the guest is still mid-meal, is probably to offer to change the waiter. And generally speaking, spend as much time as possible as I can doing the little things around the table for the guest. I think they automatically just feel better when they see that the manager is actually taking care of things. But in a really busy scenario, it will probably be swap a waiter out. Yeah. In fact, that's what we did last night.
Yeah, 100%. Tim, I think that's so I think, you know, your answers are good, and that is, you know, find another service ambassador or waiter or waitress to take over that table, because maybe that one that's giving bad services is overwhelmed. There's just too much is going on, or they're having a bad day, or they've now built up a little bit of a bad reputation with the guests, so rather remove that person. I like what you're saying there in terms of a manager getting involved. I think that a lot of the times when a manager gets involved, it just shows the guests that we take it seriously. And I think that's what Tracy highlighted, is that, you know, one of the biggest challenges that we find with dealing with complaints in our restaurants is that a lot of managers think that if they go and say, I'm sorry, or waiters and waitresses, rockstar service ambassadors say that they're sorry, that's supposed to be good enough. It's not. It's what you do afterwards. And you know, if any of you can get the book, and Tracy's actually got it, and it's called Setting the Table. And it's really a great, it's by Danny Mayer, if I remember correctly. And one of the things that he says there, he says, you know, when you're dealing with a complaint, it's more about how you come back from that complaint and what you do afterwards, that can actually bring that guest back. It's how you respond to the situation. And this is what it's about, because I think everybody knows that nobody's perfect. We all make a mistake somewhere along the line, but it's how you react and respond to that. And that's what makes the difference. So Timothy, I think that your explanation and resolve is 100% on point. The problem is, or the point is that, are we all making sure that we do that? Owner shouting at staff. Geez, that's a tough one, eh? How do you deal with that kind of thing, especially if you are the owner or you are the GM or something like that, and actually complaining about your behavior? How do you deal with that one, guys? I mean, I don't know what. I know Brad's on the chat. I don't know this was a real live situation that happened. I can't remember which restaurants it happened at. So I don't know, Brad, did you deal with this one in any way or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm busy driving, so just bear with me. It wasn't one of the Western Cape restaurants. It was one of the other restaurants in the northern part of the country. The guest walked into the restaurant with a couple of high-end clients and was greeted by the operator of the business swearing and being misogynistic to the female service ambassadors.
Yeah,
it was quite a crazy thing. It took me about 4 or 5 days to really rectify this whole situation with the guests, but we eventually won it back over, so it was all sorted.
So how do you deal with that kind of situation? I mean, so it's a case of, I mean, you've had to deal with a couple of special pearlers, eh? I mean, I remember one of our previous managers who also decided to get a little bit friendly with one of the guests. He no longer works at the branch. I remember that one. That was about 1 year or 2 years ago, where he paid a compliment to a guest about her cleavage.
No, it wasn't quite a cleavage. He made a compliment. He paid a compliment to the young girl's father about the size of her boobs.
So yeah, that was definitely taken. Certainly wasn't. Yes, that's exactly where it was. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that was. So I see that complaint.
Wasn't it the wife, Brad? I thought it was the wife.
It was the wife or somebody. Yeah.
It might have been the wife. Yeah, I can't quite remember. It was
I'm pretty sure it was the wife.
It was the wife. He paid a compliment about the wife's cleavage to the husband. And it was taken out of context at the time. But yeah, so those are tough ones to deal with. I mean, you've got to now, because now you've really upset a guest, and now it's a case of trying to deal with that. Yeah. So we've always got to be aware that we're always on check, and people are watching us, and our language that we use around our business is guests can always hear us. Not checking up on meals. Yep. Also came up as quite a regular complaint that was logged with customer care that we have to be aware of. And then obviously, guys, just dealing with cold food, noise from another guest, and racism can be a bit of a toughie one. That's a tough one to deal with. Because often the noise from other guests and racism are sometimes tied in together. Because unfortunately it can be an African table with an Indian table, or a white table and an African table, or an Indian table, and vice versa, as you know where I'm going with that. So what's the general rule of thumb if you do have that? First rule of thumb for me is that if I come across a table that is maybe a little bit noisy than they should be, and a lot of that is caused maybe because of alcohol, they're having a good time. First thing I want to do is I want to gauge, are they being over the top noisy? Is it a reasonable amount of noise that the guest is making? Okay. And if I can see that the behavior of that particular table is affecting other people, is that what I want to do is, first and foremost, I ask myself, okay, so are they being over the top? Yes, they are being a little bit over the top. I'm going to go to the table and I'm going to say, hi there, sir, ma'am. I can see you guys are enjoying yourselves. Can I just ask you just to keep it down a little bit? You know, if they're using bad language or et cetera, just ask them to tone it down a bit. Remember, if you go there friendly and polite, hopefully they'll, and look for that person in the group who is quite reasonable. Like what like Thomas was saying, is that there was that one guy who was quite calm about his ribs. Yeah, that's the kind of oak that you talk to, because they're the reasonable person, and they'll actually get the rest of the team to calm down. Don't speak to the one making all the noise. Don't speak to the one who's drunk. Rather get the party from within to try and calm the people down. That's if they're making too much. If they are making a little bit, it's excessive kind of noise. The other point, though, is that let's say, for instance, a table is making an acceptable time. They're having a good time. They're enjoying themselves. They're laughing. It's not over the top. You know what I mean? They're just having great fun. But you can see that it's just irritating maybe another table. Sometimes just go to that table before they bring it to you and say, hi there, sir, because maybe they're having a business meeting. Maybe it's a quiet husband and wife, whatever. Maybe go to that table and just say to them, you know, so ma'am, would you like me to move you to another table where you can it can be a little bit calmer for you? And I actually dealt with that. You know, in my particular restaurant, which is a Spur, as you know, we're right next to hockey fields, and we had a huge hockey tournament that was happening on a Friday night. And there was this little table in the corner, this husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, enjoying themselves. And all of a sudden, 24 people came and sat around them. It was 12 teenagers, and it was 12 adults. So they were all one big family, and they almost like formed like an L shape around this family, around these two people. And I went to the table and I said, hey, howdy guys, I just want to check, you guys are kind of wedged in amongst all these people. Would you like me to move you somewhere else? And they said, no, it's fine. It's actually quite nice, you know. So and this is what goes back to Tracy's point, is that it's about being proactive and looking out for it. And this is what's really important, is that, you know, I'm hoping that we're going to put this out, and some of you guys are going to share it with your waiters and waitresses and fellow management who are not able to attend today. And I think that what's important is that the guys understand is that if we're proactive towards our situations and our guests, and we look at us, and would I be happy in that situation, and you go there and preempt it, a lot of the times complaints don't become a major, because they go, you know what, this manager is doing his best to try and help me have a better experience. And that's what we're all about. We're not about walking around our floors, just walking around waiting for complaints to happen. We're actually managing to prevent them from happening. It does become very difficult if it's a race thing, because then it's because you're black, it's because you're Indian, it's because you're white, You know, one of the best solutions I actually heard from one of our managers was that he had a table. I think he had 3 tables that were having a go at each other. And one said this, the other one said this, the other one said this. And he said to them, he said, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I actually don't know what to do here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to stop. We're going to reset. Everybody's going to stay here. I'm going to actually come and stand here and sit here. I've got paperwork to do. It was like in the late afternoon. I've got paperwork to do. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to do my base sheets and my table. I'm going to do what I need to do. If anybody, first table, that starts giving us chirps and gears, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to leave. Well, what happens? And I thought it was quite a different way of dealing with the situation. And the guests all sat there and finished their meals, and he had no problems whatsoever. Yes, is he giving up his time where he could be doing something else? Yes, but he kind of dismantled this whole big issue that could have happened. Because if you move the green or the red or the pink table, what happens? Somebody's going to say, oh, but that's not fair. Because you pink, why are you moving the pink people? Or because you pink, you moving the green people. Are you with me? And it can just get a little bit ugly. So I just thought it was quite an interesting way of dealing with that situation. I hope that you never have a situation to deal with like that. I have. They are horrible. They are never nice, because all you're trying to do is make sure that everybody is happy and nobody wants to assist you. But I think the important thing is just getting out ahead of it, as what Tracy mentioned a little bit earlier. Okay, so those are some of your types of complaints that can occur. when you are in your restaurants. I think that what's important in terms of this, ladies and gentlemen, is just this complaint investigation report. I think that when you do receive complaints in your businesses, think about it and have a look at, what was the problem, and how are we going to fix it? I agree with what Tracy said a little bit earlier, and I don't believe in just inviting guests back and giving them vouchers to come and eat in the restaurants. Yes, you can do that, but it doesn't necessarily fix the problem. It generally just, or it doesn't solve the problem. It generally just fixes it. Because now the guest comes back and has the chance of getting the same situation, the same bad service, the same bad product. So what you've got to do is you've got to go and identify. So why were, as what Thomas said, so why were those ribs tough? Why did the guests get cold food? Oh, somebody didn't do the 5 o'clock check properly and they didn't put the hot pass on. Or they never got hot plates. Why didn't they get hot plates? Was there a shortage of plates? When we were cooking the ribs, what happened? Did we not defrost them long enough? Had we not cooked them long enough? Was it a new person cooking the ribs? We need to find out exactly what happened. And this is what's really important in terms of this customer investigation report. And I would like to believe that you guys do something like this when you receive a complaint in your business. So not only when it goes to head office, but in any time, so that you can understand what is the process, where did the process go wrong that caused this particular complaint to occur. And this is our responsibility as leaders within the business. And it says, store name, the complaint occurred when, who was the senior manager on duty. Now that's a very, very important point. And something I'd like to highlight for you is to please, every time there is a complaint in your business, is that the most senior person on shift needs to be told about that problem. As soon as it happens, the most senior person needs to be informed. So even if I'm in your businesses and I'm working, or Brad's in your business and he's working on the floor and a guest has a problem, we need to then go and say, hey, Peter, this is what's happening at table 5. Tracy, this is what's happening at table 5. And Brad or myself might be dealing with the complaint, but we need you to know about it, so that at least hey, I've had this happen before, this is what I've done, etc., so that we can pick up some form of a pattern. Who was the manager responsible for the section? Who was the waiter, day of the week? Is it every Wednesday night? Why on a Wednesday night? Is there a particular team of management or staff or waiters and waitresses that work on that particular night? Time, all of these things give you an insight into what caused that particular complaint to occur. So these are important things to take into consideration. And then, like it says here, what are you going to put in place? So these are important concepts. Who contacted the customer? Is the customer coming back? And the dates that we will follow up with the guest in terms of that complaint. It just shows that we care. At the end of the day, that's what every guest really wants, is they want to make sure that we show that we care about them. Okay, so let's just chat about this. Food poisoning complaint. Okay, very serious. It's treated with extreme seriousness. What happens? Guest phones in, says that they had food poisoning. What do we need to do? First thing we need to do, okay, is we need to then thank the guest, obviously, for bringing it to our attention. And I think that Brad might chip in a little bit here in terms of this, but I'll just go through some of the basics here with you. And then I would like Brad to just add in a little bit. And then for us to correctly follow up on this and prevent it from happening again, would you mind if I ask you some details about the incident? So at what time did you visit the restaurants, so we know when they were in there? Okay. What meal did you eat? Get details of salads, vegetables, desserts, everything. Don't just get a reply of chicken. You need to know exactly what the guest ate. Okay. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen, it is an incredible, serious allegation, and restaurants can be closed down or absolutely get closed down just by the bad marketing that occurs from this. Did you eat everything that was served to you? If not, what did you not eat? Did you eat something from somebody else's meal? If so, what did you eat? When did you first experience symptoms? What were the symptoms? How long did the symptoms last? And have you had to seek medical attention? Okay, so I think that if they've had to, and a lot of the times the people will say, oh yeah, no, I went to the doctor. I went to the doctor to try and get this sorted out. A lot of people will complain about a runny tummy. And the point that you want to make here is, like it says there, thank you very much for your time. we'll aggressively investigate this and correct any possible areas. I think that what's also very important is to stress across the guests, not that we want to come up with excuses, because remember, they're feeling very delicate. They are accusing us of food poisoning, which, as I said, is very serious. But we also want to kind of defend ourselves and say, well, we have very strict hygiene processes in place. We check our products twice a day. We practice FIFO, so we make sure that nothing is going to expire. We make sure that we check our product in terms of smell it, taste it, etc., etc. We follow the cold chain in terms of not allowing our products to sit outside in the danger zones. So all of these things are very, very important in terms of how we go about setting up our businesses and preventing this from happening. So this is important that we stress this across to the guests. But yet, remember, it doesn't matter what you say, the guest is still going to say, well, hey, I'm not feeling well. And unfortunately, they'll always say to you, and I only ate at your restaurant. Well, what did you eat for the rest of the day? Nothing else. But unfortunately, they want to blame it. They want to blame it on us. I think that the important thing is, like it says, to say thank you, and that we will investigate this further. Okay. I'm going to ask Brad to chip in here. I haven't quite finished this, but I'd like to just give Brad maybe a little bit of a chance. If you want to add in something, Brad, I'm not sure what your signal's like. Would you like to add on to this, Brad? Brad? Maybe he's not there. I'm not sure if you're okay. So maybe Brad's got a little bit of a bad signal at the moment. But one of the things that's quite important to do is when you are dealing with these food poisoning situations, ladies and gentlemen, is if the person does seek to get medical attention, we have to be very careful that we don't go and offer to pay their medical expenses right off the bat. Okay. You have insurance for this. You have third-party insurance, which is for liability, and they are the ones who take care of these situations. I know that often, as what Thomas has said, as what Tracy has said, as what Timothy was saying a little bit earlier, we almost want to do right by the guests. We feel sorry for them, and then we go and say, okay, cool. Well, let me go and pay your medical expenses because you went to the doctor, etc. When you do that, you can be opening yourselves up for a little bit of taking responsibility and then saying that it was the cause from your restaurant. General rule of thumb that gets advised by your customer care is that they need to show proof from a medical practitioner that it came from our restaurants, and then what we will then do is we will then pass it onto our insurance processes. Okay, that is the process that we advise in terms of that. Has anybody got anything that they would like to ask or state? Maybe they've been through a food poisoning situation themselves. I know it sounds quite inhumane and not customer friendly. Anybody want to add something?
Dave, yeah, it's Tim again. I just got one thing. So I was working in the Middle East before I came to work here, and I did it for about 2 or 3 years for a very famous hotel chain. They run on the principles of what the European Health Organizations advise. So they've identified something like 15 allergens that exist in food. And I think what we're kind of lacking right now in terms of our approach to guests is we're not getting them to identify when they have allergies of any kind, because soy has now been identified as a major allergen, and it's a big part of the basting sauce, but it's not really mentioned anywhere on the menu. So what we actually need to do is we need to start, I don't know, we need to add something maybe in our interaction with the guests where we ask them to highlight anything that they may have an allergy to. Because I suspect maybe probably about 50% of any complaint that's coming through right now regarding food poisoning, I actually think it might just be something as simple as a soy allergy that nobody was aware of.
Yeah. You're right. I know that I had this question asked to me by one of the stores, and you know, and once again, unfortunately, I'm not sure if Brad's on it, and I don't have a menu in front of me. But generally, what we should be doing is that if there is any form of, I think the classic allergies are normally nuts, etc. Is to identify those on the menu. So yeah, it is a point for us to have a look into. In terms of how we could possibly approach that differently. But yeah, I think that often that's what happens is sometimes some people have a runny stomach. They associate it with having a food allergy or having, food poisoning, but it's actually more just the food was too rich for them at the time. But you can't really explain that to a guest in terms of, because then if it comes across that you don't really care. But yeah, thank you very much for that point, Tim. So I think that, anybody else got anything else to add that they would like to add regarding a food poisoning situation? No. All right. So just make sure that you do follow those these processes. I think that what we'll do is I'll just in collaboration with Brad, we'll just put together a little document, so to say, that we can send out to you just for the in case, just something to keep on your file, to keep in the background. Of in case when we deal with these kind of situations, because these kind of food poisoning situations don't always end up at customer care. And I know that you'll probably phone Brad for advice on what to do. So please, let's have a bit of a background. But the idea is that please don't go and just say, well, I'll pay for your medical expenses, because then you're opening yourself up. I can give you a true life story of what happened to one business. There was this one guy, and he was actually working in his business, and a kid was running around, and this child who was running around the restaurants kind of went into a wall, and he had to get stitches in the top of his head. So the operator, who was a very, very, very nice guy, and was like, just loves kids like we all do, and he said to the child, he said, hey, come, let's take you to the local hospital. He took the parents. He felt so sad about this happening to this little boy. He took them off to the local hospital and paid for the stitches and that to be fixed. That was on the Saturday. And then on Monday, he gets a lawyer's letter that they want to sue the business for 150,000 Rand because of the injury to the child. You know, you try and do a good thing, and then all of a sudden now you're open for a case of neglect or just dangerous play. So it did go away after a while because it's passed on to the lawyers, but it's just that's how some people think. So you just got to be very aware of that. So if it's a takeaway meal, ladies and gentlemen, also be aware of that, please. If it is a takeaway meal, ask these questions. How did they store the product? Did they reheat the product? What was the time left between buying the meal and consuming the meal? You know, what happens if the guest left it out overnight and then they only filled it up the next day? Do the guests know the correct process to follow when they are dealing with our products and how to store products? Do they maintain the cold chain? Did they let the product get cold, then reheat it? Did they take it hot and put it in the fridge? As we know, if you put a hot product in the fridge, it's going to go sour. So naturally, you're going to have a problem with the product. Did they consume anything else? And once again, we will investigate it in terms of that. But the most important thing is that we need to get medical proof that the cause of food poisoning did come from a product that they ate out of our restaurants. Okay. Just in terms of, I'm not going to go through this line by line, but just in case of knowing what's happening, we'll put this kind of documentation together just for you guys to know in terms of what did happen. I think that a lot of people believe that food poisoning generally only occurs like the next day. If it happens too soon, then maybe it's not really our fault. But like it says there, 2 to 6 hours, person's got nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps, diarrhea, headaches. Those are very, very normal. Normally, those are the first signs that most guests will share with you. Like it says there, sometimes it can be 30 minutes. I'll even say to you, we were driving home and I started feeling funny, or I didn't sleep that night. You know, I came to your restaurant at 10 o'clock and I was feeling nauseous at 1 p.m. I was up vomiting all night. So effectively, that could be Staphylococcus. So this is maybe from not handling the food correctly. So you just got to be very, very aware that these things can happen in terms of what causes how a person can feel. All right. And basically what happens here is it just gives you a breakdown of 6 to 48 hours, 8 to 22 hours, how the guest can feel. So it's just an important backbone in terms of what you need to be aware of while you are dealing with complaints. Okay. The next point here just has a look at 1 day to 3 weeks, flu-like symptoms, 2 to 10 days in terms of how the person feels. And then also there's also other bacteria that can cause from 12 to 50 hours, etc., etc. So, you know, just making sure, I think that if we are armed with all the right information, hopefully we'll be okay. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what happens, whether it's our fault or not, the guests do want to feel that you care about them. And I think that one of the most important things is that you phone them a couple of days later just to see how they're feeling. You know, we had a situation in our restaurants where a guy broke his arm in the play area. We took down an incident report. We did whatever we needed to do. We then phoned the next day to check how the child was. We never volunteered to pay for any medical expenses, but more to just understand where they how they were doing, and we just showed care towards those people. They actually didn't want us to pay anything, so it's still kind of, if I was to say, an arbitration, they're still letting us know what's going on, and keeping us up to date in terms of how damaged the child is. But unfortunately, we can't go and say, well, we'll pay your medical bills of x-rays for 800 Rand, because we might open up a whole can of worms, so to say. So how do you handle a complaint when it happens, ladies and gentlemen? Just very simply and quite simply is always to stay calm. You know, when a customer presents you with a complaint, keep in mind that the issue is not personal. He or she is not attacking you directly, but rather the situation at hand. I think that's one of the most important things. Is I find that a lot of people, when they deal with a complaint, they think the person is being personally attacking them. No, they're just bringing a point to your attention. Listen to what they have to say, and then, like it says here, is we need to win that confrontation. We need to try and make sure that when I say win the confrontation, we need to win that the guest is going to be on our side. There's no point winning, like it says, the confrontation in terms of winning that we are right. I want to win the guest back over. And how do I do that? I need to make sure that I listen to what that person has to say. What a lot of people do in a complaint situation, whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, are complaining to you or something like that, is you want to come out on top. You never what I always say is that you win the war, but you lose. Well, you win the battle, but you lose the war. So you might say, I got you, I was right. But you may never see that guest again. So what's the point? Sometimes you've got to look at what the bigger picture is. So stay calm, make sure that you listen, let the person let off their steam, understand exactly what they are talking about. Stay professional, and let them share their frustration. And as it says here, just listen well. I think that for me, one of the most important things is to go down next to the table. I always do that. Doesn't matter where I am from a complaint situation. I remember in our last store opening, which was up in Kimberley, there we had a slight miscommunication between a new waiter and the table. They ordered a starter and a main. They wanted them to come together, but the waiter, you know, as can happen, they bring the starter before the main, and the wife got her food before the gentleman. And he was a little bit irritated about it. I went down next to the table. I apologized. I listened. I'm terribly sorry. But I can go to the guy and say, well, it is a new waiter or waitress. It doesn't fix it, guys. It doesn't make it mean it's right. We're not giving him the experience that he wants. I said, sir, please let me take this away. I'll cook her a new meal. We'll bring your meal all together. But I had to show that I understood what it felt like and where we had gone wrong. Like I said, do not interrupt as the customer vents and sees that when they see that you are not reacting, they also start to just calm down. I think that's one of the most important things to do, is to just get the guest to calm down. If they see that we are calm, they will calm down. And then what happens now is you can now enter into a conversation. There's no point. You'll always notice two people shouting at each other never accomplishes anything. You need to let both parties need to be calm. So we talk there, acknowledge the problem. I understand this is what's happened, sir. Let me get this. Your ribs are a little bit chewy. Thanks very much. Let me take those away. I'm not sure if I'm going to have another batch. Can I maybe get you something else? Or let me try you and let's try some other ribs, and let's see what we can do, depending on the situation. But I'm a firm believer is that most guests are not all that, or not one, but most guests, what they want you to do is just to fix my problem. I don't need a freebie. I came here for a great meal. Give me a great meal. I know you made a mistake. You seem to be a friendly, nice person. Okay, cool. Let's deal with it accordingly. So very important. I always refer to it as last. Listen, apologize, come up with a solution. All right, solve it. Make sure the guest feels happy. And then just thank the guest. Be 100% committed to ensuring that guest wants to come back, and follow up constantly on their meal. And that's what it'd be like the last F. And if you could know what that could mean, it would be the last F up. But follow up. A lot of management and waiters and waitresses and service ambassadors is that we fix the complaint and then we never go back to the table. We've just got to keep on, I believe, killing them with kindness. Is everything going well? Can I get you another drink? Can we top you up? I'm not offering freebies. I'm just making sure that I give them that extra attention. And I think that's something that Timothy was speaking about. It's something that Tracy also mentioned. So are we doing that? Complaints is completely a mindset. Your mindset towards the complaints is very, very important. Okay, so just having a look here, just in terms of your face, what should you be doing? I always believe go there with great eye contact and a little bit of a smile on your face. Don't laugh at the guest. That'll really send them over the top. But just going there with a smile on your face, because you'll see it on your eyes. And when they're like, hello, sir, how are you? I believe you wanted to see the manager. How may I help you? And then I believe about looking at it like feeling embarrassed. I don't want a guest to complain. I almost want to be embarrassed that it happened, and that they had to go through that and endure that, because none of you are starting today wanting to give your guests bad service. You're all wanting to give them a great experience in your restaurant. And when they get a bad experience, I say feel embarrassed about it, but show it. Have open palms. Be very great eye contact and listening to your guests. Posture, like it says, stand not 100% upright. Lean into the table, lean from your hips. Don't slouch, don't lean on the table. And very importantly, with voice tone, I use a very simple analogy or metaphor, and I just say, well, speak as if you're speaking to your granny or grandpa. How do you speak to your granny or grandpa? You always speak with calmness. So are you doing that? And your non-verbal communication is very, very important. With the way that you go and talk to the guest. So it's great eye contact. Listen to what the guest has got to say, and just kill them with kindness and understand from where they are coming from. There are a lot of people who are currently going through a lot of stress. A lot of people are stressed because various holiday destinations have been closed. I mean, I was chatting to a lady this morning, and she was absolutely irritated with life because she's going to Plettenberg Bay for her holiday for 3 weeks. And now she's been told the beaches are closed. You must understand how upset this lady is. So now what happens when she goes and orders her cup of coffee? Maybe she takes it out on that poor lady, But where did that guest come from? Okay. So let's have a look at some quick complaints that occurred. And this is very important. I'm extremely disappointed with the service I received. The staff, including management, have no idea how to correctly implement COVID-19 procedures properly. Patrons are allowed to walk around the restaurants and even enter the restaurant without masks on. The staff see it happening and nothing gets done. Patrons are not told to put their masks on once leaving their table. Additionally, temperatures are no longer being checked. This is the second time I've been in this branch and complained about the same issue, and nothing gets done. Today alone, I complained to 2 different managers about the same issue 3 times. The one manager just stands there, is watching and watching it happen even after me complaining. It is absolutely unacceptable that for such a big brand in South Africa to not properly have trained their staff on how to correctly implement COVID-19 procedures in order to ensure the safety of their patrons and staff. I will definitely not be supporting and will further report this to the COVID-19 hotline. Ladies and gentlemen, having listened to our speech of our president last night and understanding what's going on in terms of the second wave, please do not underestimate how important it is to still keep on maintaining COVID-19 protocols. Every guest should be walking around with a mask on. Every guest should be entering with a mask. They must be scanning the temperatures, and we must be taking sanitizing their hands. Okay. We're currently single-handedly sending ourselves deeper and deeper into a second wave, and we cannot risk having our businesses closed. So I know it feels uncomfortable to walk up to guests and say, please, can you put your mask on? But we have to do it. We have to do it. We have to make sure that our guests, that we're protecting ourselves and we're protecting our guests. And it's more for ourselves. At the moment, the biggest risk people are 15 to 19-year-olds who are asymptomatic. who are coming home to their families, and now they are possibly infecting their families and could be infecting us. So please, 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 be aware of this and be strict on it. And don't be scared to ask a guest, sir, ma'am, please can I ask you to put your mask on when they are walking around your restaurant. Okay. I visited such and such a restaurant on the 25th of October. I was shown to a table by your waitress. I sat with my son and waited almost 10 minutes to get my order taken. I eventually walked to the kitchen area and asked for a waiter to take my order. Waited again. Floor manager checked on me. I told him I was still waiting. The waitress then came to take my order. We ate our meal, but not the best tasting meal. I wanted to pay, looking for the waitress, couldn't see her. I got up again and went to the kitchen area to pay my bills as I was getting no waiter. It was an awful experience to have. I had to beg to get service. I reported the matter to the manager on duty and did leave my details, still awaiting for a reply. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, it's not difficult to get this restaurant thing right, but cheap as it's hard, eh? This is just poor front of house management. This is just no care. You know, what happens when you're not in your business? What is the values? What is the ethos? What is it? Is it the care of the guest? And, you know, this is a real life complaint that came through from a guest. You know, and we just have to be so careful. And this is just, like I said, how do you prevent this? Managers on the floor, managers checking on tables, making sure that I've got service ambassadors allocated. You know, maybe there was too few. What are we doing about it in our businesses? Okay. Next one, customer walks into the store, ordered a takeaway. Guest sat down, waits for his food. When he got his takeaway, he asked if all the things were in the bag, and no one checked the meal with him. The female did not wear the same uniform. She wore a black check shirt. The manager basically just read what was on the slip. Ordered a barbecue chicken breast, a lazy age rump, 500 gram and a rib, and starched cheesy prawns and mushroom sauce. So you can possibly understand which brand this is from. The guest did not get his side with his chip, which is chips and onion rings, and didn't get his mushroom sauce. He also didn't get his veg and butternut as requested. The guest lives far away from the restaurant and does not know what is going to happen now. So, what is your process and policy regarding takeaways? Are you making sure that all of your meals are being checked before they leave? We cannot afford to just give the guests a takeaway and assume that everything is in the bag. You have to have a process of checking every meal with those customers before the meal leaves the table. Check if it's Mr. D, Uber Eats, whichever you have in your area. Are you checking your meals are still going out? There are guests who are still not coming and eating in restaurants and are waiting for takeaway. So are we actually checking up on those meals? And this will prevent this complaint from happening, because there is nothing worse than getting all the way to your meal or getting halfway home and realizing you got the wrong item. I was in a restaurant last week and the same thing happened. The guy had ordered a pizza. I happened to be there ordering pizza myself, and the guy came back and says, "Hey, I've just driven halfway home only to realize you gave me the wrong pizza." You know, how irritating is that? And that's just because of poor process within the business. So a lot of complaints occur because we don't have the right process. But when that guest comes back, it's about, "So I'm terribly sorry about that. Thank you very much. Can we get your contact detail, please?" You know, how do we make it up to that particular person? And I do believe that just saying sorry is not good enough. Maybe giving them in this case here, maybe giving them an ice cream, giving them something, a voucher to say, well, we are apologetic for what happened. Okay. So this is our last one that happened, and just really about long wait for food, which we have spoken about. All right. So, ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. I think that at the end of the day, when it comes to dealing with complaints is so much about your attitude towards it. It's about thinking that the guest is not here to rip you off. It's about making sure that you are there to understand that guests, that when a guest complains, they're helping our business to be better. We may not like what they have to say, but they are actually helping us in terms of what we can do to be better. And I always say to guests, I can't eat every meal that comes out of the restaurant. I can't be served by every waiter or waitress. So I thank you for your feedback. And then let's work with it to make our business better. Don't always believe that every guest wants a freebie. Sometimes all they want to do is let you know what happened, so that you can fix it. So when they come back again, you can give them you can make sure it doesn't happen to them. and doesn't happen to other people. And lastly, I think that a guest who complains actually is telling you that they care, and that they want to ensure that everything runs smoothly in the business, so that other people can have a good time, and they care about your business because they want your business to be successful. Okay, so thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. Thank you, Thomas, for putting your details down. For Timothy from Muli, thank you, Clay. Just go onto the chat, please, ladies and gentlemen. If I could just ask you to put your details on there. So Enoch, just Stanley, just put your details on the chat for me, please. I've got Tienes, if you could just put your details on there, please. Lazaro, please also put your details on the chat in terms of which restaurants you're from, just so we've got that there. And then I wish you all the best. Have a great day. I hope that the 15th is going to be successful, that you've got lots of bookings coming in. But in the meantime, yeah, please can I ask you to thanks, Tienes, appreciate you putting your details on there. So I'm waiting for Stanley to put his details on there. Enoch as well, please. Clay, thank you. Thomas, you've done. Clay has done. Enoch, I need yours, please. Stanley as well as Lazaro. And I know that we also had Peter there for a while, but maybe we lost signal a little bit earlier. So
Dave,
yes.
may I offer some feedback? May I complete a feedback form verbally?
Yes.
Thank you very much for the training. I remember one of the first trainings I went to at Spur HQ with I shall leave the name unmentioned, but it was a day training on customer complaints, and we spent the whole day discussing how customers are the problem. It was so frustrating. So anyway, shot for that, because I think that is definitely especially with our clientele. I get it, Spurs maybe a bit different, but our clientele, when people complain, it's like 9 times out of 10, it's a genuine problem they have, and so many times it's not they want a free meal or they want to discount it or they want a voucher. It's literally because they love the place and they want to give feedback,
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks for that.
100%. Yeah, thank you. And I think that you're right. And I think, in Durban, we have a certain clientele that sometimes rubs our managers and waiters and waitresses up the wrong way. And I firmly believe that, like what you've said there, when a guest complains, it's generally something that for them it's genuine. And if you look at it, it probably is something. So the important thing is to please just look at it from that perspective and deal with it. For every complaining oak that you say is X, I'm going to tell you, I'll find you one of my friends who would be exactly the same person, who is they just look at things differently. And that's fine. They're making us better for what they do. Stanley, thank you. Tienes, thank you for putting your details on. Lazaro, I don't have yours. And Enoch, I just needed Enoch to put his details on there. So thank you very much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be good. Have a great afternoon, and we'll chat again on Thursday. All right. Awesome. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye. Here we go. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody.